Hey guys, so today we're going to answer a subscriber question, and the question in question is, Frederick, in your opinion, what is a mid-level project? So let's get into it. Now, this was in response to one of my videos where I tried to kind of explain what a real project is about and a little bit of the mindset that you need to have here. And a few people seem to, well, I think I got the message through, but I still, since this question kind of came along, I think that we should elaborate a little bit on not just what a mid-level project is, but rather what a mid-level programmer actually is all about. Now, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and suggest that most likely quite a few of the people who are watching would refer to themselves as beginners or junior level programmers. But okay, so where does that distinction lie? Like, when do you actually get to be a mid-level type of programmer? Well, the answer is a little bit fussy. It's very tricky to define exactly how that is. But what was interesting was that this specific person I was talking to had this little comment about different projects that, according to this person, made you a mid-level programmer. And these were things like a web shop, streaming service, this sort of thing. And then boldly claiming that if you've had a bit of work experience, ideally around 5-ish customers, and you've delivered things and gotten paid for it, that's when you are a mid-level programmer. And in my mind, and this is kind of where I responded and said that I don't really agree. The reason why I don't agree is because it's a little bit more complicated than that. So the definition for some people when you are a mid-level programmer is that you can actually produce money, or that you can make money. And depending on your definition of making money, most people will be surprised that I can claim with a lot of certainty that, well, if that's the requirement for you to be like a normal grade programmer, that you can make money, then basically every person who can make a basic mobile app is a mid-level programmer. You see, that's the issue with having that definition, because the thing is, a junior starting at a new company will if you are producing any type of software at all, you are producing some form of value, and that should translate into money. But when it comes to being a mid-level programmer, the definition is a little bit, it's not a great measurement, because say the web shop example for this person was talking about, that okay, so if you can build a fully fledged web shop, then you are a programmer. Well, no, or rather, you're not a mid-level programmer just because you can do that, because the complexity of a web shop can range from super high to super low. If I go and I get an off-the-shelf solution like WordPress, I can basically have a web shop going without almost any coding practices. And that's the thing. That's the thing that is tricky. So what I will argue is that the best measurement for how close somebody is to being a mid-level programmer, or having a person who is just a professional, has to do with the distance between where their current skill level and being fully autonomous. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is that as a software developer, when you are a junior, when you start at your first company, the company will account for the fact that you do not have the necessary skill requirements to be as productive as the mid-levels or the seniors and so forth. And that's accounted for. In other words, they are already assuming that you will not be normally like as productive as everybody else. And they will take steps to fix that. A mid-level programmer has an onboarding process, but you are very quickly expected to just perform as any professional. In other words, you have gotten to the point where you're just another hire. You're just another person going to start working on the project, and you're expected to be as productive as everybody else. You're expected to be able to Well, of course you're going to have questions because every project is different, but you're not going to, like, when people hire you, they will assume that you already know how to work by yourself, and that you have the skills to work at the level, at that specific company. That's the assumption, because as a mid-level programmer, you are now a professional. This is as professional you're going to get, and getting to be a senior has just to do virtually with, well, becoming more senior, if you will, or working for a longer period of time and pushing yourself and so forth. But you can think about it more as going to the gym and lifting weights, as opposed to chalking down a certain amount of projects that you have completed. Because the thing with like portfolio projects, that's what I asked this person about this as well. Like, if you have quote unquote work experience, and you've been working at a small-time agency or as a freelancer, and every project that you've had is like a month or 2 or 3 months a piece, that's not going to impress anybody. Nobody's going to think that you are a mid-level programmer because you've done that sort of thing, because quite frankly, the weight or the investment in that is too low. Like, there's no way for any company to know how good you are based on that little amount of information, because, you know, most mid-level programmers have quite a few years of experience before they get to be just a regular professional, because it takes time to grow those skills. Just as going to the gym, it's not you're not going to have a six-pack in a month. You have to work at it for a little while, or a few years in some cases. And that's the thing that I argue is what's important when you want to determine, right, what's a mid-level project, or when are you a mid-level programmer? And the short answer is you should have the skills necessary to start working at basically any job and be within the onboarding period, which is, depending on the person, a few months to a few weeks to something like that. Then you should just be able to work as any professional. And the best way to check yourself against these requirements is, number one, when you make anything at all, like you produce a library or a project, or you work or anything like that, you can ask the fundamental question: is this production software? Is what I'm making right now at a grade that is high enough that any company could just use this, or a customer could use this, and you could actually just put this out into the world and people would use it as any project? You want a few examples of like Redux, or like all these JavaScript libraries that are used in actual production software. That's the level of project we're talking about. You don't have, of course, these are very popular ones, but that's what I'm talking about. You're not making something cute like a to-do app or anything like that. You're making actual production software. That's number one. And the second thing is, do you still need a portfolio? Because that's also something that comes into it. This is a big, well, it's not a secret really, but as a junior or as a freelancer or things of this nature, your portfolio will matter to a certain point, because you simply don't have enough work experience. You don't have credentials or any type of, you don't have like long running projects that gives your employer a sense of security when they're hiring you. But if you have that, if you work as a true professional, these things like portfolio sites and like these things that a lot of people do in the beginning, they don't really matter all that much anymore. And when you pass like the 5-year threshold, they're almost just a compliment to your skill, because as I said, you are now perceived to be a mid-level programmer, and at a certain point it's more important, as I said, how long you've been working on these projects and who has employed you, who you've already worked on for. That's more important than how many projects that you have had. That's at least in my experience. Have a great day.